Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Samurai Goddess. The goddess next door takes on kung fu killers in this action-packed martial arts Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Samurai Goddess in paperback and e-readers today. If I were hired to be the editor-in-chief at Marvel Comics or the president or publisher of DC Comics, I would have one mission, and that is to make comics fun again. And my vision for making comics fun again is getting back to those core foundations established by great craftsmen like the head of DC Comics in the 50s. I think his name was Mort Weisinger, and the great Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and people like Jim Shooter. I want to get back to that type of editorial platform, and I want to get back to those type of editorial standards. And I want to make comics fun again for readers of all ages. And the reason why I want to make comics fun for readers of all ages is because I understand that comic books are an escape. And they're supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be a place where we get away from our problems and we see fantastic adventures where good guys beat the bad guys. And that's pretty much going to be the core foundation for my vision for Marvel Comics or DC Comics in the 21st century. And to build on that foundation, I would create a story model pretty much rooted in the old classic story model. That means the end of the event era. As I see it these days, the event model is pretty much obsolete as of right now. Pretty much comic fans are tired of it, and many new readers just can't stand it because there is no entry point for them. So in my story model and my story platform, we're going to go back to 2 to 3 issue story arcs. And in these 2 to 3 issue story arcs, the core focus is going to be on character-driven stories, because people, when they buy comic books, they're buying them for the characters. They want to see these characters have fantastic adventures, and they want to get to know the characters. And it's hard to get to know a character in an event because there are just so many characters in an event that you really can't get to know someone. So if I was the editor-in-chief at a comic book company like Marvel or DC, it's going to be all about the characters. The characters are going to be first, and the story models are going to be all about building up these characters, building up their development, and pretty much letting the audience get to know the characters and what makes them special. That would be the core of my platform of making comics fun again and making comics accessible again, because I believe what Jim Shooter said in one of his blogs many years ago as the truth, and that is this: every comic is an entry point. And the reason why every comic is an entry point is because that the reader dictates where they want to go when they buy comics. It is not the right of the publisher to tell the reader when to start reading. A reader will pick up books wherever they find them, and if they like what they see, they can continue to pick up books. And that would be pretty much part of my core platform as an editor-in-chief at Marvel or DC Comics, is to get those readers to be able to pick up whatever they want. Because I've seen myself with my own SJS Direct Publishing imprint that readers pretty much are going to pick the books that they want to pick up, and that's where they will start. And that's happened with my ISIS series, where people have picked up the book with the Beauty Myth, or they've picked it up with All About the Goddess, or they've picked it up with Bride of Dracula. And those were books that were way later on in the series and not the first book. And then the whole point of this whole making it accessible is to pretty much make it where readers can pretty much pick up whatever they want, wherever they want. If they want to pick up the most recent issue, they can do that. Or if they start with the first issue, they can do that. It's about going backwards and forwards and being able to follow things in a logical and consistent manner. So that's part of the fun of collecting comics, is that accessibility. And another thing that I would want to do to keep comics accessible is, in addition to saying no more events, is no more reboots. Because to me, a reboot is like saying you failed. It is like saying that you just wrote a story that was so bad that you pretty much painted yourself in a corner, and now that you're frustrated, you pretty much want to tear everything up and start all over again. And that's not what any professional editor is going to let their writers and creative people do. Because any professional editor in chief is pretty much going to make sure that the characters stay consistent and that the stories stay consistent, so that the point where these creators are not painting themselves in a corner. In fact, they're going to try to give them guidance so that they won't paint themselves in a corner to the point where they have to call themselves rebooting everything. Because when you reboot everything, you're basically frustrated, and that frustration pretty much trickles down to the customer, who becomes frustrated at the sense of having to pretty much stop everything that they were reading and start all over again. And that's why these sales have dropped so badly, because customers are frustrated. As I see it, pretty much we don't need any more events and we don't need any more reboots. What we need in comics to make them fun again is consistently good quality stories, consistently simple stories, consistently easy to follow stories. That's what's pretty much sold comics for ever since the 1930s, and that's pretty much what's going to sell comics in the 21st century. And another thing that will have to be done, in my vision for comics in the 21st century, is that there has to be a focus on trying to market comics not only on a print platform, but on a digital platform. And I would try to do things to try to reach new customers on digital platforms, because as an ebook publisher and a paperback publisher, I understand that are a big market, especially with younger readers. So one of the things I would want to focus on is expanding the digital market and expanding that digital platform. Moreover, I would like to try to do things with the print market to try to reach other venues. Now, a lot of venues have pretty much had problems with comic books thanks to that Heroes World disaster of the 1990s, which pretty much killed all the distribution platforms. And as it stands right now, as I see it, the diamond model, it's pretty much not working, because with comics being non-returnable, we really can't get a fair assessment of what's really selling and what customers are buying. All we know is that comic shops buy a lot of comic books, and what they order is based on certain things. But what really would tell us if what comic is selling are returns, and that's why I would like to see returnability return to comics, because that's really going to give us a real observation and a real assessment of what's selling and where we could go to take the industry to the next level. Because as it stands right now, all other magazines are returnable, and comic books need to go back to being returnable so people can see what's selling, what story is really catching on, and pretty much be a way to get into those venues that comics used to be in, like your grocery stores, like your supermarkets, like your drugstores, and like places like Walmart and Target, where they can get more exposure. Because I look at the distribution model as it stands right now, and the distribution model just doesn't work anymore. So when I look at comics and the big picture, I see that there could possibly be an audience for it, but all it takes is somebody with a vision for the future to take comics back to the next level. Because as I look at it right now, with the industry being in a 25-year slump, there has to be a real heavy focus on rebuilding. And when I look at editors and chiefs today, they have no vision on rebuilding. All they're thinking about is maintaining a dysfunctional status quo, but we have to focus on the future. And no one wants to do the hard work of rebuilding, because rebuilding means you're going to have to go through a lot of hard times. And what these guys don't understand is that the era of the 90s and those fast sales where you got 1 million sales or 100,000 sales, that era is over. And the rebuilding stage is going to be hard work. You're going to have to deal with a lot of losses. You're going to have to deal with a lot of pain. And you're going to have to deal with a lot of hardship, because when it comes down to publishing, it is a marathon. And this is something your Axel Alonso, your Dan Dido, and your Jeff Johns don't understand about publishing. It is a marathon. It is a long run. And when it comes down to publishing comics or any publications, you're going to have a 90-10 failure rate. 90% of the books you launch are going to fail, and it's the 10% that do well that will cover the losses of the 90. And this is just core to the business of publishing, and it just is what it is. And this is something that many in the comic book world don't understand regarding publishing. That's why I say you need a publishing professional with a vision and a plan towards rebuilding the structure for Marvel or DC. Because I look at both companies as it relates to their publishing divisions, and the big problem with them is that they don't have a publishing professional in place to pretty much do that hard work and do that and work through those lean years and take those losses and advocate for those critically acclaimed yet struggling books and make efforts to try to promote them or make efforts to market them or do things to support them. No, they're still stuck in the world of the 90s and still trying to push gimmicks. And if I were to work in the comic book business, it would be trying to rebuild everything, because I look at comics and we really have been putting off the rebuilding of this industry for over 20 years, and there needs to be a focus on the rebuild work. And the rebuild work is hard. It's going to be rough, and it means you're going to have to, stick with some titles during their lean years. You're going to have to do different things to market titles, and you're going to have to try to make content that again is family friendly. And because a lot of people are in their 40s, they want the characters like they had, and they want to share those characters with their kids. And they go to the comic book store these days, and they don't see family friendly and kid friendly, and that's really sad, because they go to the movies and they see family friendly and they see kid friendly, and that's what they want in their comics. So when I look at comics, they need to get back to being simple, basic, easy to read, easy to follow, 3 to 5 issue arcs that pretty much anyone could pick up at any time. And every story needs to be an entry point, and that would be my long-term vision for the Marvel Comics brand or the DC Comics brand, because I look at both companies and they're still trying to use gimmicks and events when we don't need gimmicks and events. We need to get focused back with characters and stories, because that's going to be the bread and butter of the business, because people buy comics for characters and then they stay for the stories. That is how you sell series, and that is how you get new readers. It's just a simple business model. Unfortunately, everyone is too busy reinventing their wheel to focus on the basics of the business. Now, as I look at the business, it can pretty much move forward, but it takes people with vision and creativity to take the business of comics to the next level. And that's something I would love to do if I ever got the chance to, working at a company like a Marvel or a DC, because I believe I would have a vision towards rebuilding that company and working towards moving it forward in the 21st century. If you want to try some of my SJS Direct Universe titles, such as the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, or the Temptation of John Haynes, or The Man Who Rules the World, you may do so by going to my Amazon.com and clicking the link in the description box. And if you really like this channel, you can donate to the Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam, Little Girl Lost. The devilish diva helps a lost little girl find her way home in this devilishly funny E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam, Little Girl Lost in paperback and e-readers today.